All right, Matthew Lundy back here with a few more questions that I'll be answering about implementing blended learning in my classroom. On the screen right now, you are seeing a drawing that I've created using Sketchpad IO. If you Google Sketchpad, you can get this really cool application where you can do drawing, and it has lots of shapes and lines and stuff like that that you can use to design something. So up on my screen, I've just designed what my classroom layout looks like. I've got counters all around the outside of my classroom that have gas and sinks in them to do labs, and then in the middle, I've got all these desks that I can move around and to make into different shapes. So you can make them into rows, you can make them into different formations around the classroom. So I've chosen to put the desks in clusters of four. So that's what it's showing there. And then up at the front is my desk. And that desk also has gas and water as well. So the first question that I have is, what is the physical space you can use? Okay, this is it. And you can see I've labeled the different parts based on the type of model I'll be using in my classroom, which is the next question I'm going to answer. And I've opted to use the rotational model. So the students will be moving from station to station, and like you saw in my last video where I have the checklist for students to complete, these are the designated areas that they will be completing each of the activities. So in the desk clusters, this is where the students can watch the flipped videos and work on their checkpoints. Once they've finished their checkpoint, they will go to the back of the room where the checkpoint check is. This is where all the answers are going to be, and they're going to be red pens so they can grade their checkpoint. I'll also be hanging around this area a lot of times so I can make sure students are grading honestly, and also just answer questions about when they get certain questions wrong on their checkpoint quizzes. When there's a demo, we'll do it up at the demo desk. This is my personal desk, but it also has gas and water, so it makes a really good spot to do demos, and I can have them set up there and keep them set up, and then once a group of students is ready to watch a demo, they can come up and watch up here. After the students watch their flipped videos and their desk clusters, before they move on to the checkpoint, they need to do some practice questions to make sure they're ready. So there's guided practice that will be built into their notes, so they'll be able to go over here and check it. And the change here is that the guided practice won't be for a grade, but the checkpoint that they take at the end will be. So the checkpoint is a more honest assessment than the previous method, because they won't be taking their homework home, they'll be doing their checkpoint in class, which means the students also have the option to watch their flipped videos at home, but the desk clusters are always available for that. And then lastly, over to the left here is this lab space. So anytime there's a lab, I'm just going to have the lab set up. Students can access it at any time. There won't necessarily be a designated lab day, but again, I'll be facilitating, walking around the room, answering questions, and making sure that students are working safely. So I've answered what model we will be using. We'll be using the rotational model. I've talked about the physical space that will be used. I haven't talked about the type of devices that are used. So in my school, my students have MacBooks. We're one-to-one with MacBook Airs, which means students have access to internet, they have access to YouTube, they access Google Classroom, all that stuff. The only issue that can possibly arise is if the student's MacBook isn't working. That happens sometimes. Usually they get a replacement for the student to temporarily use, so that isn't often a problem, but mostly the only problem is going to be if the internet is down in the school. So my plan is to have a lot of these videos downloaded. I do have all of my videos downloaded to my personal computer, and if anything happens to where the internet is down, I will just project videos up at the front of the classroom, and the students sitting in the desk clusters will have the option to watch those videos as they go on. So we probably won't run the demo desk that day, but all the other stations can still run while the video is playing at the front of the classroom, and kids can sit in the desk clusters and take their notes. Alright, that answers all 7 questions. Again, we talked about the problems we were trying to solve, what type of team we need to use, what we want the students to control, what the primary role of the teacher is, the physical space, what devices we would be using, and the model. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and hopefully you can learn something to take to your classroom.